The first step of this will be the design part, where I walk through how to create a three-dimensional model of a switch. And the second step will be to show how to turn this 3D model into an actual real-world object using what is called a slicer. So jumping into it, I am currently in a free program called Fusion 360. This is the program that I will be using to build the 3D model of the switch. It uses two-dimensional sketches, which it can turn into 3D objects, and I will show you exactly how this works. When you open the program for the first time, this is exactly what you will see. There are a few buttons at the top and the main viewport. You can also see this viewport represented in the top right corner with a little virtual box. This shows us the perspective in which we are looking at the viewport. If I click and drag, it will change the perspective that we are looking at the viewport with. Inside this viewport, there are three origin planes. You have the XY plane, which you can think of as this direction and this direction. The XZ plane, which would be this direction and up. And the YZ plane, which would be this direction and up. It's a little difficult to see here without an actual object in the scene, but it'll make sense once I start building one. And to get back to the home perspective, I can click this home button, which will take me back to the angle that I prefer to view the model at. To start building the switch, what I want to start out with is a two-dimensional sketch, which you can think of as a drawing. This drawing will be done on one of the three original planes. I'm going to select the XY plane, which again you can think of as the ground, and draw what I would consider to be the base of the switch. To do this, I'm going to click Create Sketch up here and select the plane that I want to create it on, which would be the XY plane. This will reorient my viewport angle to a top-down view, which you can see shown on the top right box. To create the base of the switch, I am going to use the rectangle draw tool. Specifically the center rectangle draw tool. There are a few different ways that you can draw a rectangle, but this is the simplest one for this case. Once I select the tool, I will click once on the origin, and now I can drag my mouse and you can see a symmetrical rectangular shape appear, which has a center point on the origin, and I can drag my mouse to where I want it to be, but I can also type in the specific dimensions to be more precise, which should be 15 millimeters wide by 7 millimeters tall. When I hit enter, the rectangle is created, and that is all I want to do for the first sketch. So I'm going to click Finish Sketch, and that'll reorient my viewport so that I can get a better view of the sketch I just made in 3D space. You can see that this sketch is a flat drawing on the XY plane. Before I do the next step, it's worth noting that when I created a rectangle inside that sketch, I created what is called a face. You can think of a face as a flat, fully constrained side of an object. A box has 6 faces. All the sides, the top and the bottom, make up 6 faces. In this case, I created one face because a rectangle is boxed on all 4 sides. So from here, what I want to do is create an extrusion of the face that I just created. What an extrusion does is it takes a face and stretches it along an axis. I'm going to zoom in here. To create an extrusion, I want to click on the extrude tool, and it has auto-selected the face that I just created. In order to extrude it, you click and drag the upward arrow, and you can also type in a specific dimension for how tall you want it to be. So I want to make it 7 millimeters. Hit enter. And now I have a rectangular box with 6 faces. The box is 15 millimeters long, 7 millimeters wide, and 7 millimeters tall. So this is a great start, but it's not exactly the switch design that I'm going for yet, so I need to make a couple more adjustments. To make those adjustments, I'm going to make a new sketch, and since I have an actual object to work with now, I'm going to create that new sketch on the object I just created. I can do that by clicking on the face that I want, clicking Create Sketch, and the viewport will automatically reorient this to the sketch plane, and now I can start sketching again. The reason I decided to sketch from this side of the box is because I want to create thumb grooves that will turn this box-shaped object into one that more looks like a switch. To do this, I'm going to create a sketch exactly as I did before, but instead of using the rectangle tool, I'm going to grab the circle tool and make 2 circles. One here at 14 millimeters, and one here also at 14 millimeters. I set both of these circles to be 14 millimeters in diameter to create a symmetric groove. And by now you can probably see the design that I'm going for. I am done with this sketch, so I'm going to click Finish Sketch, and the plane will reorient again. Now as I hover over the side of the object, you can see that it's broken that face up into several smaller faces. There's the face of the circle, the face that I cut out, 2 faces that I cut out, and the main face of the switch itself. Now to actually make the changes to the rectangular box that I made, I'm going to click on both the pieces that I want to get rid of, and using the same extrude tool again, instead of dragging it in the positive direction to create a shape that I don't want, I'm going to drag it in the negative direction, which will perform a cutting operation. And once I have cut all the way through the object, I can click OK, and it will make that cut. And you can see that there is now something that closely resembles a switch. This is almost done, except remembering the original design, I needed to create a slot in the bottom of this switch so that it could sit on a piece of metal that stuck out of the handle. So in order to do that, I'm going to do exactly what I've done in the past 2 steps. I'm going to rotate this over, click on the bottom face, and create another sketch. I'll zoom in here. And using the center rectangle tool, I'm going to create a 5mm by 1mm rectangle. And I'm done with this sketch, so I'll click Finish Sketch. That has now created a rectangular sketch on the bottom of the switch. Using the extrude tool again, I will click on the face that I just created and drag it into the object 2 millimeters to create that cut. And now we have a complete switch, which you can see has a slot in the bottom and 2 thumb grooves. This is a complete 3D model. Now that I have a complete 3D model of the switch, what I want to do is export this to a program that will turn that switch into instructions for a 3D printer. Now the way I want to do that is I want to go up here and click File, 3D Print. This will open a new window, and I can select the switch I just made. We're going to leave unit type at millimeter, preview mesh, we can leave that off, refinement is fine at medium, and I want to send this to the 3D print utility, and I use a program called Cura, so I'll go ahead and click OK. This will open up Cura for me and import the 3D model I just made into the program. Cura is a piece of software that's called a slicer, and what a slicer does is it will take a 3D model and slice it into individual layers that the printer can create on top of each other. As I zoom in here, you can see the switch that I designed. I can move this anywhere on this build plate, and this is a virtual representation of where the switch will be created on the actual printer bed. I'm going to leave it in the center for now. If I move over to the preview window, you can see the actual lines that the printer will be making as it makes the switch. Now because this is a pretty small print, those lines are actually somewhat noticeable. The line width that the printer can actually print at is about 0.4 millimeters, and that is the width of one of these lines. The layer height is about 0.2 millimeters. This switch will require exactly 34 layers of printing, as you can see over here. So if I drag this down to 0, you can see each individual layer from top to bottom. One of the cool features of Cura is I can actually play back a simulation of what the printer will be doing as it prints a layer just by clicking this play button. The simulation runs a lot faster than the actual print, but if you look in the bottom right corner, you can see that this entire print will take about 5 minutes. and it should only cost me about a penny. And that's it.